Welcome everyone to another episode of The Life of Charles Schmidt. This is episode 6, where we'll be talking about the scam artist. Welcome Charles again to another of your episodes, another story of you telling all our viewers out there your experiences and how you think that people can learn from your experiences. Today we'll be talking about the times that you have been scammed, the times that you probably have been taken advantage from, and you probably feel betrayed, right?
True.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
That's great.
Good.
Awesome. So, Charles, to get started, when do you start giving your money? Do you have any fears of taking advantage of, or is that something that came afterwards?
I don't have any fears. It's not been a primary thing in my life. In other words, there's so many benefits to giving that I know that people get taken advantage of, and so I'm an easier mark than the other people because I am not cautious and skeptical like I should be. And when it happens to me, and the one time it happened to me, it had a real bad effect on me.
So how many times had this happened to you?
Well, it's happened to me a considerable number of times. It happened to me by my own brother when my mom died. It's happened to me a bunch of other times. It happened to Jean Taylor. Somebody tried to take advantage of her. And it happened to me when my health failed and I was on a committed journey to give away a large part of my estate.
That's great. And that kind of brings me to my next question, by the way. Who was this first person or organization that you trusted with your money, and why you did that?
The first person, well, most recently, in my life, I haven't had a lot. I've had a lot of money, but relatively, mostly for myself and my income, my family and stuff like that. So I never was really into giving large amounts of money until I inherited it from my wife. And my first thing of generosity was my wife was a woman of distinction. And I didn't even know that it benefited Palm Beach Atlantic University. I didn't know anything about that. But I somehow saw in the shiny sheet they were having a Palm Beach Atlantic program, Women of Distinction, so I wanted to go to it.
Okay.
And it was at the Breakers. And I went there, and it was real nice. And I knew a lot of those people there, the Women of Distinction, half of them were friends with Jean's.
Okay.
Palm Beach Atlantic University has a strong music program. I met Jason Lester, the Dean of Music. I liked him a lot. And then I read in the newspaper that this professor gets fired. He got fired for teaching some class, racial justice. And the school objected to that, I thought. And then he went on social media, Facebook, and also went on CNN, and they picked up his cause. That here's a 20-year-old professor that got fired because of teaching racial justice. And he went on a podcast, Jamar Tisby, which is an activist, podcast, and told him all this bad stuff that happened to him at Palm Beach Atlantic. In other words, he's telling his side of the story. And I'm listening to it, and I'm believing it. And so I don't want anything to do with Palm Beach Atlantic after that. On the CNN, or on one of the podcasts or something, he says that all of a sudden I've lost my job. They fired me. I have no pension. I have no insurance. I have no anything. And, my wife's got to scramble around and get insurance. And, I think, geez, this is horrible what happened to this guy. So I go on the Palm Beach Poverty Appraiser's office and I get his name and his address. I sent him a very sympathetic letter and on $10,000. And he calls me up and tells me how much it meant to him, or writes me a letter or something. Then I come over and meet him, I give him another 10 grand. Then, I don't know what I give him another 10 grand after that, I don't know what I did. But anyway, then I called my friend Jason Lester, the Dean of Music there, and I take him to lunch over at the yacht club, and I said, I want Palm Beach Atlantic to hire this guy back. And I said, I'll pay his 1 year's salary, up to 100 grand. And also give you another 25 grand to have Mikhail, the piano player, come over here again. Well, they picked up on the 25 grand, but they didn't pick up on, they didn't want this professor back, not at any price.
That's interesting. So at what point do you start noticing that something wasn't adding up?
Then I meet his wife. His wife is very charming, very nice. And I'm very emotionally attached to these people who I think in my mind have been abused by the system, the university and everything. And I'm also, my health is, my blood pressure's up, I'm not feeling good, I think probably drinking too much. And so I told him, I said, I want to give away a bunch of this money. Mm-hmm. So she says, she wants me to, her son goes to a local high school, mm-hmm. and they got an ROTC program. Mm-hmm. I go over there, I get involved in the foundation, and I give them 100 grand. There. And I tell them my sad story about Palm Beach Atlantic and what they did to this professor over there. And so then I've given them 100. Then the professor would come over once a week, just like you, and he would interview me, and he said he wanted to write a book about me. Well, he was an author. I don't need a book about me or anything, but, I enjoyed his, I don't say companionship, but his intellect, and, I just, as I understand it, it's loneliness. In other words, I don't like to be by myself. I like to be talking to somebody all the time.
Gotcha.
So he comes, then I get to know his wife, and his wife's real nice and charming and hardworking, and she's had a hard scrabble life, lots of, bad stuff's happened in her lifetime. But I tell them I want to give away some money. She said, well, why don't we, give away, the such and such high school. And my son goes there and is part of the ROTC program, the foundation, and they need a whole lot of equipment and stuff like that.
So you went to the high school and see the kids?
Went to the high school, got a very good reception, very nice kids, very impressive. So I give them $100,000. Or I give it to it's a foundation or something. In terms of foundation, hadn't been started. So that it's something with exchange of checks and stuff like that, change and getting a 501(c) approval and all this kind of stuff. Now I'm organizing the foundation. They asked me if I want to be on the board of directors. Well, no, I don't want to be on the board of directors because I think I'm going to die and I don't want to be controlling of anything. And so Here's the money.
So you give the money to the wife of the professor. Okay.
And she's the president.
And she became the president of the 501c3.
And then, but it's getting toward the end of 2023. And, I've just sold my apartment for a whole lot of money. So I think I want tax deductions and stuff like that. I think I'm dying. I want to give away the money. So she picks up on that and says, why don't we start a Charles Frederick Schmidt Foundation? We didn't want to. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's good. $100,000 for that check. And so I'm not the president of that. My daughter's vice president of this, that. So that's $200,000 from there, and $100,000 I've already given them.
So it will have been $200,000. You said that you didn't want to be involved in the whole foundation thing.
Right.
But there was a family member.
I didn't want to legally be involved. I wanted to participate in the scholarships and see who gets the scholarships and who, it's my money.
And then but there was a family member, in this case your daughter, involved in the whole.
And when you have a corporation, you're supposed to have meetings.
Mm-hmm.
They never contacted her.
Gotcha. Okay. So what happens then? So after giving her $200,000,
then she says that her daughter is taking a gap year, but she's been approved to New York University, and tuition there is $99,000. So I'm thinking, this is, she's not paying attention to my money. I don't know what anything's happened to that money, and she wants another $99,000 on top of me, on top of the 100. So now I'm looking $400,000 total.
300,000, 200.
100 to him, 100 to Dreyer, 100 to Charles Schmidt, and 99 to the dog.
That's 400. That's 400. Yes. So what did
I said? Well, look. First of all, I don't know anything about your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never seen her report card or grades or anything she's done. They show me it. I said I never met her, never saw a picture. So they give me an essay she wrote that indicates to me that she's not quite all right. She's got some kind of mental issue somewhere, like abuse somehow.
Okay. So besides all these kind of red flags that you were seeing,
well, that was the red flag that said, "Hey."
Okay, so that was a red flag that made you stop for everything.
Let me make sure that what's the money been spent on these other two foundations?
Gotcha.
Well, you're not entitled to know because you're not a director. I gave the School of the Arts $100,000, and then I was very friendly with the guy in the foundation, very nice, and then they involved me in the school where I got interviewed over there, and I liked a bunch of the kids. Everything's great. So I want to give scholarships to them. And so I tell them all these, they tell me people want scholarships, so I give 60,000 scholarships to them. But I think the scholarships are going to come out of the $100,000 that I already gave them.
Mm-hmm.
But they want another $60,000.
Okay. So did you confront any of them?
The answer is no, because I was giving away the money. I was not going to survive, I thought. So I was not particularly worried about, my biggest loss was not the money. The bigger losses were, I thought, not only was my physical health bad, I come to the conclusion, rightfully so, that my mental health is becoming severely impaired.
Wow. How do you build trust after something like this? Because,
Well, I still had the same joy of giving. I did not lose that. And because Jean Taylor, my wife, I had such good fortune through her. Because she introduced me to so many good people. And she was so kind to me, and she, was way more than the financial benefits she was. She made me feel good about myself.
that's great. So how did that experience affected the ability of you trusting others?
Well, I became much more cautious, and I didn't feel bad about losing the money, because it doesn't affect my lifestyle, but I did lose my when I requested information, where'd the money go? These people the professor and his wife become very tight with me, and I took them to various performances. I introduced the people at the foundation. I thought maybe I'd get the professor a job at the high school and all that. I was crazy about him. So then when I asked for the accounting, they thought that, they knew that I knew that something wasn't quite right.
Mm-hmm.
So they determined that, and they're friends with the people at the foundation that supports the high school, they tell them that, they write a letter that Mr. Schmidt has been having young children over, videotaping them at his apartment without the approval of their parents. So that indicates I might be some kind of pervert.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, I took them to a dance recital at the high school, and these girls are superior dancers. They're very attractive dancers. It's a great, great show. I mean, amazingly good for high school students. Well, she interprets that as I was oogling the girls. In other words, that I had. And this is all in a letter, and this goes to a lawyer, and it gets up over the foundation. The foundation, they're figuring, the school thinks, holy crap. One of the donors is some kind of a pervert, and that could give a black eye to the foundation, a black eye to the school. We're going to keep him away from these people, our students. So that tarnished my reputation. I don't have an opportunity to communicate with those kids anymore. I can't help them like I want to. I have no connection with them.
Yeah, how did this change the way you bet people, nonprofits or causes today when you want to help them?
Well, I'm a little bit more cautious, I'm a little bit more, and I'm looking for opportunities. Like I've gotten involved in the symphony now. I give them. There's this girl that's involved with this Selfless Love, which is for adopted children.
Mm-hmm.
Very successful charity. Real nice people. I'll give them money. I'm back with Palm Beach Atlantic University. I'm meeting with the president, which makes me feel good, gives me self-satisfaction. Whether the president wants to see me for the money or my information, doesn't make any difference. The president wants to see me, and I am invited to the topping off ceremony of the business school the following day. along with a dinner. So I'm included, and I think they respect me. But that's not important. The fact that, I will support them with either money or information or help the program, or I know some person or a whole bunch of them that might be major benefactors to that school.
That's very nice of you. So, based on that experience that you lived, if you go back to that exact moment where everything started with the professor, what would you done differently from what you did?
Well, I most certainly I would have never reached out to him in the first place.
Okay.
And I would have believed that, a guy doesn't get fired after 20 years unless he maybe did do something wrong.
Okay. But don't you think that this...
And besides that, he sued the university because they terminated him, and he didn't get any money from them. So if you're suing somebody and you don't get any money, it's probably you're the one that's wrong.
So then this whole thing wouldn't happen if you were back to that time again.
Another thing I lost is I had a painting. It's not worth a lot of money, but it's worth more to me than any painting I've ever had. And I've had Grandma Moses and all of Jean's, some of that, her real fine artwork. But this was done by a professor in the University of Prague that I met over there. He's like 90 years old. And I bought several of his paintings. And one of them happened to be a painting at late in life. Nobody come and see him because he was up on the third floor of this apartment building, 90 years old. Nobody could want to walk up those 3 flights of stairs. His friends, and they were all dead. So they have to drop a key down off the balcony. And so a friend of mine I was with, Libby, and we saw him, and I bought his paintings. But the painting that struck me the most was, since he has a lot of self-portraits, but there's one where the woman behind him. And the story on that is he was painting himself again, and his wife came up behind him and said, "Honey, it's time for lunch." Went to time for lunch. He says to her, "Stay right there." And he painted her into the painting. And so my caption or my thought on that is, behind every great man is a great woman.
Absolutely.
Jean was a great woman. She was behind me. I was a shattered man till she came along. And this guy recognized the fact that he had a great woman behind. Don't move. I want to paint you into the picture.
So what happened to the painting?
I gave it to the professor. Now I don't have it anymore. Doesn't mean anything to him.
Because you knew the whole story behind it.
He doesn't.
Yes. Okay.
He might have even thrown it out or given it away or something.
So given what you just said, would you say that you are now wiser or just God?
I'm considerably wiser.
Okay.
Sure.
That's great. What did this whole experience taught you though?
Well, to be cautious. There's still a lot of good charities, a lot of good people, a lot of worthwhile causes. There's a great separation of wealth in this country and in this world, and I happen to have a little bit more than most people, not as much as
other people that
control the world.
So to our viewers out there, probably some of your friends will see these, probably some other people your age, the same way you're looking at, how to survive over 64, and you're looking at these kind of videos and stuff. What advice would you give them in terms of avoiding getting scammed from people like the professional in this case?
Well, be alert. Know that it does happen. And, there's all kinds of red flags that I didn't recognize. Don't fall in love with somebody so much you think, oh, gee, I'm not trusting with my life.
Gotcha. So if someone you care about was about to be generous enough that they want to give money and contribute money to the world out there, what would you warn them about?
How much do you know about this thing?
Okay. Going back to you, do you believe that people are good, or are you still in the process of figuring that out?
No. I think there are good people and bad people. And my process of figuring it out is who's good and who's not. So I can't tell right away. I can tell through relationships. Some work out and some don't. And so just like buying a stock, you make good investments and bad investments.
And I think that's a perfect example.
Let me tell you something. Warren Buffett, he's on that TV. He's a brilliant guy. Now, I had an old guy, Jim Simpson, when I was 21 years old, just getting into the stock business. And this old guy called me into his office and he says, everybody needs a daddy. And he tried to portray himself as my daddy. In other words, he was giving me advice. It's not perverted or anything. He was genuinely interested. Now, in one of my tapes that I was doing with the kids where they were interviewing me, I said, everybody needs a daddy, because I was referring to my friend Jim Simpson when I was 21 years old. Now that was interpreted by the professor and his wife. Everybody needs a daddy. So he's trying to be a daddy to these kids. That statement, everybody needs to be a daddy, for me is very meaningful, but for somebody else it could be interpreted as something's wrong.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, thank you for sharing your experiences. The last question I have for you is basically something where we have done in some of the videos. I would like you to finish the sentence that goes, "Giving didn't break me, it taught me to..."
Well, personally, it gives me a great self-worth. In other words, an emotional high in that I have done something good. So it's financial benefit. People, some people are benefited. I'm more interested in seeing that they emotionally get benefited, that they lead a better life, just like giving has made my life so much rewarding, so much better.
Got it. Well, thank you, Charles. That was an amazing answer to that sentence. Everyone, we hope that you have some takeaways from this video today, for these great men. They covered a lot today in terms of being wise, in terms of being cautious, in terms of being awake, in other words, about who you trust in your life. And remember, being social is important, but it's also with some type of caution to who you let in your life, who you trust. Therefore, stay tuned for the next video. Have a great day. Thank you.